The verdict is in the Misty Stoddard trial. The jury finds Misty guilty of murdering her 11-year-old autistic stepdaughter, Melissa. And my SNN co-anchor, Amber Stidham, joining us now here in the studio after being at the courthouse all week and reporting for us live. What is more information you can share with us tonight on this verdict?
Well, as you know, Misty Stoddard was found guilty on both counts of first-degree murder and aggravated child abuse, and ultimately what was the death of 11-year-old Melissa Stoddard. She was living in that home on Delft Road with the Stoddards, with Misty and Kenneth, for about 5 months before she died. And really, this whole case was centered around a board, which we will get to in just one moment. You see video here. This is just before the verdict. It took the jurors just over 2 hours to come up with this verdict that they reached. Again, guilty, and that first-degree murder charge that she was found guilty of, that does carry a life sentence. Let's go ahead and listen to that courtroom.
Ms. Stoddard, the jury, having found you guilty of felony murder in the first degree and aggravated child abuse, the court at this time adjudicates you to be guilty of felony murder in the first degree and aggravated child abuse. I believe Ms. Stoddard will be entitled to a pre-sentence investigation as to count 2. However, in light of the jury verdict and the fact that there's a mandatory sentence on count 1, does the defense wish to have a pre-sentence investigation or waive a pre-sentence investigation?
We do wish to have a pre-sentence investigation, Your Honor.
All right, then I will defer sentencing until, it'll have to be at least 30 days after now so we can get the PSI done.
Yes, sir. I have August.
You see that's Misty there getting handcuffed, and she does also get fingerprinted as well. And I can tell you much of this case was centered around the board. You've heard a lot about Misty was accused of restraining Melissa to this board you see on the video right here, restraining her to that and putting duct tape over her mouth, putting a sock in her mouth. Ultimately, Melissa died. She was brain dead. She no longer had oxygen to her brain. That was in the testimony and in the investigations. And it was this case ultimately was centered around this board. And for much of the testimony, you heard 4.5 days of testimony from the state. That board was sitting right in front of the jurors. So that had to have had a lasting effect, you would think, in their minds. Now let's go ahead and hear from Melissa's own mother, Misty Stoddard. She did testify on earlier this week in the trial. Obviously a very emotional testimony. This is her 11-year-old daughter that we are talking about, who passed away in December of 2012, but she seems to be happy with this verdict.
How are you feeling after this?
I'm just happy with the outcome of the verdict, that's all. Very happy that my daughter was seen as a person and not as this crazy kid.
How hard was this for you, having to come face to face with this woman?
It was very difficult, but I'm just happy with the outcome. Thank you.
A bit of closure, you would think, for Misty Stoddard. Now, throughout the case, the defense has said that it was, in fact, Kenneth Stoddard who made the board. Kenneth, it was shown in video that he was the one who bought the board. And ultimately, the defense had their case centered around that it was Kenneth Stoddard who ultimately restrained her and killed her on that night. Obviously, that was something that the jurors did either not believe or did not find in their minds to be factual, because they, again, did give her a guilty verdict on this, ultimately saying that she was the one responsible. But you go through, again, 4.5 days of testimony, a lot of it very emotional and a lot of it very complex, very factual. There are several investigators out there, including FDLE, FBI, a lot of complex things for these jurors to understand. And even the prosecutor said it really took smart jurors to process all of this. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
It was a complicated case, complicated by the fact that there was an underlying felony, and they had to understand that the underlying felony is what led to the charges of first-degree murder. They put that all together. They listened to all the intense testimony. Some of it was very heart-wrenching, obviously, from the defendant's son, and they listened to the very complex testimony from Dr. Vega and Dr. Smith, and from the FBI analyst, the DNA analyst, and they put it all together in exactly the way the judge told them to do, which was base your decision on the facts and the evidence and follow the law. And I'm very pleased.
Mike, I can tell you, I was in that courtroom or listening to this trial throughout every moment of it, and I can tell you there was a lot of complex information and testimony to understand. So there was a lot there as far as evidence that was gone through.
Well, despite the complexity of it, they only deliberated for a couple of hours.
And I will say, I think many of us that were sitting here really watching this trial moment by moment thought it would be a bit longer. Now, you do recall the jury had come in, had a question for the judge, ended up not needing extra testimony or hearing from a previous the son who had testified earlier, and not needing a transcript from him, but ultimately just over 2 hours on that. So.
All right, Amber, there is a whole lot more that we will be saying on this as we go throughout the evening.
Yes, and there is more to be said. Obviously, this is not done. She has her sentencing August 14th, and then Kenneth Stoddard will face trial in August as well.
All right, Amber, we're going to check back with you later. Thank you.